أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه وأزواجه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah, my dear brothers and sisters. I hope you're well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, إِنَّا أَنزَلْنَاهُ قُرْآنًا عَرَبِيًّا لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ. Indeed, we have sent it as an Arabic Quran so that you all may understand. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, قُرْآنًا عَرَبِيًّا غَيْرَ ذِي عِوَجٍ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَّقُونَ. It is a Quran in Arabic without any crookedness in order that they may have taqwa. So here we notice that the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He describes the Quran in many different ways. Sometimes it's Quranun Mubin, sometimes the Quranun Hakim, sometimes it's Quranun Majid. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses many sifat, but one sifat He uses here is that this is an Arabic Quran. We cannot take away the sifat from the mawsuf. We cannot separate the adjective from what it's describing. What do I mean by this? I mean that when one would go into their local mosque and pick up their Quran and read a translation of the Quran, be it in English, French, German, Urdu, or any language, that is not the Quran. That is a translation to the Quran. That is someone's interpretation of the Quran. What is important is that for anybody to understand the Quran, they have to access the Arabic language. What do I mean by the Arabic language? Do I mean the same language that your Egyptian neighbor speaks, or the same language that your Syrian or Moroccan neighbor speaks? The same language which was 100 years ago or 500 years ago. The Arabic language which the Quran was revealed in is the classical Arabic which existed at the time of the Prophet ﷺ and the time of the Sahaba, 150 years before Hijrah and 150 years after Hijrah. This is a very important period. This is called the period of Ihtijaj, when any part of the language can be used as a hujjah. Outside of this, the language has started to change and started to evolve and started to be diluted by outside influences. But through the corpus of Arabic poetry and prose which existed, we can prove that the language remains unchanged. This is the language the Quran was revealed in. This is the language that we must learn to understand. This is the language of our deen. This is the language of the Sunnah and the Hadith and the books of history and the books of fiqh and all of the texts which help us to understand our deen at a fundamental and on a fundamental basis. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَهَذَا لِسَانٌ عَرَبِيٌّ مُبِينٌ, that the Arabic language was chosen because it is a very clear language and it is the vehicle to allow us to understand what our Lord and Master requires from us. Any other language would have been deficient, would not have had the right vocabulary, the right expressions to convey the commandments of our Lord. Our whole ummah is united upon this language. We approach the prayer in this language. We recite the Quran in this language. So there's an obligation upon us to learn the Arabic language, because without this, we simply cannot understand what is said in the prayer. We cannot understand what is said in the Quran without some kind of intermediary source. And this, as you can imagine, is extremely problematic. Anybody who wants to understand Shakespeare properly, you have to access Shakespeare directly. You can't access it through third-party intermediary sources. Now, to study the Arabic language or to study anything, it requires four things. Without these four things, at some point the student will fail. It requires a niyyah, a pure intention, because without a pure intention, all of our works and efforts are futile. You may learn some knowledge, but there will be little to no reward. There may even be sin against you. Number two, there has to be irada. Irada means an ironclad will. Your will cannot bend, it cannot be broken. No matter what, you will achieve the objective you want to achieve. For example, how many people do we know who every year they set out to lose weight and every year they fail? Why? Because they don't have the will. How many doctors who perform surgery on patients, yet you see them outside smoking with the patients that they are going to do surgery on? How strange is this? They have the knowledge, but they don't have the irada. They don't have the will. The third thing is istiqamah. Istiqamah means you have to be steadfast. That no matter what happens, you're going to see this task through until the end. And what is the end? Competence in classical Arabic. That you can open up the Quran and on a superficial level, understand what is being said. Of course, to understand the Quran, there are so many other factors involved. asbab al-nuzul, conditions of revelation, how the Quran, how it was applied by the Prophet ﷺ, the conditions and the rulings that he gave based upon the Quran. So there are many, further things which have to be understood. But just to understand on a linguistic level, it requires, that is our objective. And this requires steadfastness. Nothing can be achieved if there isn't steadfastness. You start a goal. Muslims are a people of itmam, or we should be a people of itmam. Once we start something good, we should see it through till the end. We should see it through until we have expertise and mastery, or the very least competency in that area. And the fourth and final thing, sabr. Sabran, as the poet said, sabr. فَصَبْرًا فِي مَجَالِ الْمَوْتِ صَبْرًا فَمَانِ لِلْخُلُودِ بِمُسْتَطَاعٍ. That sabr can only be achieved, glory can only be achieved with patience. You have to be patient. You will feel frustrated at times. You will feel upset and angry at times. You will have to make sacrifices to achieve what you want. But there has to be patience. Without patience, you will give up. You will give up and it will become too much for you. As Imam Shafi'i, he said, اصبر على مر الجفا من معلم فإن رسوب العلم في نفراته. Be patient upon the bitterness of the teacher, for verily the stores of knowledge are present in his harshness. And if you can't be patient, وَمَنْ لَمْ يَذُقْ مُرَّ التَّعَلُّمِ سَاعَةً. He who can't bear the bitterness of the humility of learning even for an hour, تَجَرَّعَ نَلَّ الْجَهْلِ طُولَ حَيَاتِهِ. Then he will drink the humility of ignorance for the rest of his life. So there has to be sabr, otherwise be prepared just to be ignorant for the rest of your life. So it requires you to make sacrifices. It requires you to pick a day for studying and then a day for reflection, homework, exercises, consolidation. And that requires you to really understand why you are doing what you're doing. When you study the Arabic language, you will receive little to no benefits in this world. There will be no monetary benefits. There will be no changes in your lifestyle because you've studied Arabic. It's not like you've done a master's or a PhD and you can then earn, get a job, get a better salary, get more, respect at work. But you do this for the next life. This is something which you use to protect your deen and protect yourself. When you can access the language, you can access the text and the books without having to rely upon anybody else. So, my dear brothers and sisters, studying the Arabic language is one of the most important subjects that you will study. Many of the classical scholars, they said, because it's so important, it's actually a fard upon every believer to at least try to make effort to study the language itself. This is a human language. This is not a divine language. It's a human language. Therefore, it can be conquered by humans. And there are many places that you can study the Arabic language. Cambridge Islamic College has a wonderful Arabic department and a wonderful Arabic syllabus. So there is no better place to start and no better time to start than right here, right now. So my dear brothers and sisters, I ask you all to remember to support Cambridge Islamic College with your generous donations. Your donations will help to support the study of future scholars, teachers and du'at in and outside the UK. You can support them at www.cambridgeislamiccoliege.enthuse.com/cf/Ramadan-appeal. JazakAllahu Khayran. Wa akhiru da'wan alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum.